Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Pivotal Podspective. It's 9 p.m. Thursday evening, the third time we've done this week as we go out live Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And I'm here with my co-host, Adrian Dorobantu.
Hello, everyone.
And our sales and business and life coach extraordinaire, Landie Stevens from South Africa, Cape Town, no less.
Hi.
Hello, Landie.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing, Landie? You good?
I'm awesome, thank you.
Good. We're just having a little chat before we went live, as we always like to do with everybody, and just get into that sort of, feel a bit relaxed and just have a little bit of light chat, which is what we're going to carry on doing for the next half hour, 45 minutes, or however long we're going to be chatting with you. And if this is the first time you've joined us, guys, we do go out Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday live, myself and Adrian, and we have guest extraordinaires from across the globe talking about their pivotal ideas, ways, tips, and tricks they've got to help people personally, professionally, in their business, get them to level up, to adopt, adapt, and improve. And so, Landie, you are a business life coach extraordinaire, all sorts of bits and pieces you do, which all compasses into one. So tell us a little bit about how long you've been doing this, Landie, and what you do, in fact.
I've actually been in corporate business probably for about 27 years. Running my own organization for 9 years, where I've been empowering and equipping leaders to be better leaders, in fact.
Okay. Powering and equipping leaders. I like that. Your language is good. I like it's powerful. And I'm assuming you like to help your clients and get them to feel that power as well. That's not always the case, though, is it? Not everyone always feels that power and clarity, even if you've been running a business for 10, 15, 20 years. Do you find you have to work with people a lot on that at times?
Elliot, you know what? I work with different kinds of people. Sometimes they buy in. I don't know if everybody knows South Africa. South Africa is not very au fait with the coaching industry. Right. So when you walk in, they tend to look at you and say, you're going to change my baby, because that's what a business is. It's their baby. They've grown it. And what you intentionally or non-intentionally wanting to do is come in and change something. So sometimes you step on toes. You do step on toes. But I've learned over the years that if you've got a good way of working with people, if you communicate well and you can show results, then people will trust you. So what I've found over the years is I'll go in with somebody and they will say, well, come for a month or come for a week. And I end up staying for 6 months to a year, because you build a relationship and they start to trust you and they start to see results. And that's what I've been doing for the last 9 years. I've, in fact, actually in this last week, got a client that I worked with 7 years ago that's bringing me back in now to start a new business because of the lockdown, because of the coronavirus. Bringing me back in to start a new leg of his business because they needed to reinvent.
So they've definitely pivoted then.
They have pivoted in a big way.
Good. I like the sound of that. And that must be quite nice, because you've already got a relationship there, haven't you? And so there's a trust, there's a mutual trust, and to start something fresh and new and to be given that sort of the trust to work with them on that must feel really nice to sort of revisit that client. Have you kept in contact through the years, or they've just come back to you now?
I've kept in contact with them every now and then. I think the last I spoke to him was about 2 years ago. So and it's a huge privilege to go back, a huge privilege. And it means that I did my job. My job.
Yeah, definitely. Well, listen, we've just had somebody come on, so we're going to just quickly say hello to them. Hi, Crystal Ann. What an incredible woman. Do you know Crystal Ann? Is she a fan of yours?
I do know her.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, Crystal Ann. And of course, I better have to do this, otherwise Mum will get. This is my mum. It says hello every time we do one, and obviously our biggest fan.
Hi, the Mum. Biggest fan of the show, so we have to say hi, Elliot's mum.
Hi, Mum.
Now, you may well be just listening to this, guys, and if you are, and it's just an audio podcast you're listening to, then you need to be checking this out on YouTube or on Facebook, where you can see the lovely Landie and the gorgeous Adrian, of course, and we and you can see what we're getting up to on the video. So Landie, what is it that is your pivotal thing? What is it that you use as a sort of a pivotal way of doing things that works time and time again?
Well, there's quite a few things. I believe in lead. So a leader needs to lead from the front. So when I go into an organization as a coach, I'm automatically a leader.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm dealing with leaders. And what I like to do is to teach somebody by leading by example.
Right.
So I will go into an organization, I will see where the faults are, but I won't initially address those. And I will look for their strengths and I will pivot off their strengths. But what I find a lot with organizations is they micromanage. And the reason why they micromanage is because there's a fear of being out of control.
Okay.
So what I do is I take a look at the structure of the organization. I take a look at the leader leading them. And what I do is I hold their hand and I work with them in order to make the company more successful. So generally, I normally go in from a sales perspective because companies want to make additional revenue. They want to meet the bottom line. But what generally happens is I will start with sales and then I will migrate into different departments within the organization.
Of course.
So looking at their finance department, looking at their marketing department, sometimes the operations department. Because what happens is sales sits in the middle and they all talk to sales. And what you generally find is there's a process that's a problem. And the process generally starts with sales. Sales says they can't make sales because finance's job is holding the process back, or marketing isn't doing their job. So I work with sales, but then I end up working with the other departments as well. But then becoming a leader that leads without micromanaging is the key here. You need to give your staff flexibility without micromanaging them. And what I've done is I've created a process called a KPI process, which is a key performance indicator process, which manages the staff with giving them freedom.
Right.
By getting buy-in from them to reach the targets or follow the process or buy into the strategy that's been created with them. So as a coach, I go in, figure out what the bottom line is that we need to meet or what we need to sell or what we need to change. But then I get buy-in from the staff in order to execute it.
Okay. So what do you mean you get a buy-in? So you literally get everybody to work sort of as all of the cogs working together, so to speak.
Correct. So it's working with, when I sit with the management team, I get what the outcome needs to be. So what do you want? What is the end picture? What is the big picture? What is the end picture? And then I work back.
Yeah.
And working back, I then work with the different departments, the sales people or the operations people or the finance people, and then I work forward. By doing that, they feel like they're a part of the plan. Yeah. They feel like they're a part of the solution. Most organizations, what happens is all these bright ideas are created in a boardroom, and then what happens is the orders get balked. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. And they micromanage them how to do it. So what happens is, why bother? Why must I do this? I'm doing this for the organization. I'm just a number. And yes, I get paid a paycheck at the end of the month, but what is my value? Which talks to the why, the person's why. Yeah. So with a coaching, what's the difference between just a person coming in or a sales manager managing? When you've got a coach, they come in with a fresh set of eyes. They take a look at the organization as a whole, and then they work with the entire organization to meet the end goal. And that's what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to encompass everybody as well, isn't it? You know, I mean, I think dare I say, this is probably going to offend some people, but you know, I do this at times. There are ignorant business owners that think that there's certain things that just need doing in their business. They don't really know how to do it because they may just be the creatives. They may just be the person that's has got the business to where it is, and they just want people to do things. They don't really work with them to get those jobs done. And I've worked with clients like this, you know, as well. And I know for a fact that Adrian has. In fact, we all will have worked with people like this. What do you do to get over that? How do you work around that when you've got a stubborn, ignorant, potentially even egotistical business owner? I'm probably, and there's lots of people that this will resonate with because they will have worked for people in their lives. How do you get round that? Because the staff are willing and they want and they want to give and they want to help the owner because obviously they're there and they like the owner, but the owner maybe fights them and expects things to be done rather than working with them, sort of almost works against them. How do you sort of get around that?
I've got a very simple answer to that.
Okay.
If they've brought me in, they need help.
Yeah.
And if they're paying me money to fix the problem, then they're going to listen to me.
Okay.
So it's not like they're bringing an additional employee that they've got authority over.
Yeah.
When I generally get called in when there's a problem. So if there's a problem, I commit to solving the problem, which means I need you to buy into what I'm doing. If you're not going to buy into what I'm doing, then I'm not going to start with you. Yeah. So it's about building trust. So initially, there is a lot of things I will say to them. What do I need to do in order to build that trust with you? How are you going to get buy into what I can do?
Yeah.
And then they'll give me things. So in other words, it's a report or giving feedback, or I need deadlines, or whatever the case may be. Whatever creates that comfort zone or that safety zone for them is what I implement. And once they start seeing the results, then obviously I get more buy-in. But it is a process. Yeah. In terms of entrepreneur, what you find is an entrepreneur is a very bright person. They've got the ideas, but they're not generally people's persons. They don't deal with people very well.
Right.
So those are the people that come to me because they don't know how to work with the staff. They've got this great idea and they need to get it to market, or their sales have dropped, or their organization has hit a bell curve and they need to reinvent themselves. That's when they come to me because they've got this idea, but they can't get the staff to buy into the idea, or they don't know the process, or there's a methodology that's not working, and that's when they turn to me. So yes, I've worked with a lot of those clients, a lot of them, but it's about creating that safety and it's about creating that trust. So it's a very fine line about being arrogant and then creating the trust at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, arrogance from your point of view or from the client's point of view? Because
I think it's from both, Elliot.
Yeah.
It's from both.
Yeah.
Because it's a very difficult situation because the entrepreneur or the business owner has created this organization that's really done well. And now what's happening is a pride issue comes in because now the business is taking a bit of a dip. So they don't really want to admit that, but they've brought me in. So they want to still be in control and they want to feel that they're in control, but they've brought me in to try and help. So it's a fine line, a balancing act of keeping them on the authority seat, but at the same time working with the salespeople or the operations people, the finance people, the staff within the organization. And it's marrying the two. Yeah. Because I don't want to be working at an organization for the rest of my life because then I'd be employed by them. So my key aspect is to walk in and get the staff to work with senior management. So create a process or help with communication or whatever the case may be. That is my goal, is to create the synergy between management and the employees.
Yeah. So do you have a process, a sort of a standardized process that you then twist and turn and make work for people, mold in essence for each client? Do you have a sort of a standard procedure that you tend to work with when you first go in?
I do have a standard process. First of all, it's understand. You need to understand the organization and the people first. That is first and foremost. Before I go in, a lot of people say to me, well, don't you have something off the shelf? Or can you not just tell us what to do? And it's no. I need to come and spend a day with you guys and see who you are. Yeah. Because every organization, as well as every person, is unique. Yeah. So you cannot paint everybody with the same brush. And that is something that I've stood on throughout my career, is every person is unique, which means every organization is unique. Everybody's got their own DNA. Yeah. So for me, it's about understanding and then finding the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats within the organization, and then creating a strategy based on what the outcome is. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, I sort of know the answer to some of these, but I mean, a lot of people won't, and there's a lot of people that will be working for, and particularly over the last few months, will have still been working for people that have been very, very difficult. And in fact, I'm hearing some horror stories about the way people have been treated through some of this as well. I don't know about you. In fact, getting people to work while claiming the money from the government so they don't have to work and things like that. I'm hearing more and more about it. In fact, they've even set up an investigation team in the UK to investigate businesses for these sorts of things. But to even get to that point, I mean, the culture's got to be bad in the business for the management team or the owners to be dealing with people like that in the first place, right?
Funny you say that. When I walk into an organization, it's one of two pictures that I get. Yeah. The first picture is an autocratic manager that dictator, which means it's very uncomfortable and the staff don't talk.
Yeah.
And he just talks.
Yeah.
Then you get the other side where they just give freedom. So there's no responsibility or accountability or consequence.
So you got sort of one, you got like literally opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yep. It's one of those two when I walk in there. That's why I like to go in and see what's going on, because it's either one of those two. It's never, because the middle, you got the minute you've got the middle ground, you've got that balance, which means something isn't out of sync. So when I get called in, it's which one is it?
I'm curious about something. So usually, who contacts you and is asking you for help in a business?
It varies. Generally, it's the MD. Other times, it would be your director or an HR person. So it varies who's actually responsible for fixing the problem. So, but generally, it's your MDs or your CEOs.
And what about the personality type? Did it happen for that dictator type to actually contact you and ask for help?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Because they want to save their organization and there is a problem. They'll generally bring me in. If it's a dictator type, they'll bring me in to work with another manager, and they will say that this manager's a problem and this department's a problem and you need to fix it there. So it's almost like a blame shift. So they're fine. They're doing great, but it's this manager or this department that's a problem. So I need to come in and fix that. So it generally starts there. That's how it starts.
So that's what I thought, and that's why I asked you, because I was curious. Because usually people come just to blame that someone else is making the company bad. You need to sort that out. Okay, good.
And then how often then does it turn out that it actually isn't that member of staff or that team, and it actually does come from the top? Because, you know, let's face it, often it comes from the top, doesn't it? The culture is really set by that, to the point where, you go into, your first day of a job and you're sort of sat there just wondering what you should be doing. There's no real direction. There's no manual. There's all those simple things that I'm assuming, and I should never assume, because that's the mother of all what's it. But having those things in place is a great place to start, isn't it? To start getting a bit of a structure and in place for the employees. But it does start at the top quite regularly, doesn't it?
I have a saying when I sit with either a manager or a director, and once they've given me their whole spiel of what's negative and what's working, I look at them and I say to them, do you know that you are a reflection of your team?
Yeah.
And your team is a reflection of you. And then they get taken back a bit and they say, well, unpack that for me. And I said, you know what, leaders have followers and they will do as you do. So either they will rebel against what you're saying or they will do as you do. So you're automatically a reflection. So where's the problem coming from? And generally they laugh and then I prove it. So I get that.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
So how many businesses do you tend to companies you work with? Because I mean, as a business coach, life coach, and those elements that you do, you can only cram so many people in, can't you? As one person, you have a team behind you. Do you have you work with other people to work with the businesses? How does that work?
I take on clients that I will go in and I'll see if I can get results. For example, if I sit with that director that is very autocratic or dictatorship, I will sit with him and I'll say to him, well, look, you need to work with me. If he's not going to work with me, then there's no symbiotic relationship happening there. So I won't work with him. And you're right, Elliot, there's only a certain amount of clients that I can work with. So that's why I decided to actually start a lot of e-learning. I've actually just recently launched my first e-course called The Faces of a Sales Manager, which actually gives me the opportunity to work with a lot more organizations. So it's about pivoting myself. I've always been the person that wants to be in somebody's face and in the organization to see, feel, touch, understand the organization. But during this lockdown period, I've come to realize that I can impact and I can reach a lot more people via online. And that drove me to actually get this e-course up and running, because I believe the skills that I have and the methodologies that I teach, I've used over the last 27 years. That's the stuff that I worked with when I ran teams. I had teams of between 4 and 250 people that I was responsible for. And these are the methodologies that I personally used. And then when I started working with companies, I started implementing these very same methodologies, and it's worked for them. Yeah. So in order for me to reach a lot more organizations, it's a case of going online, because then you cut out the travel.
Yeah.
I was traveling. I was on airplanes all the time, traveling from here and there and everywhere. So a lot of that became online. And of course, with the lockdown, I decided, well, I need to get my e-course out so that I can impact more, for that very same reason.
And and you've just and you said you've just released another one in a new e-course, and you had one already on working on different elements, right?
Correct. I actually, at the beginning of this COVID-19, I actually released Don't Panic, Regroup, which was all about reinventing yourself, which is actually a free course. You can get it on my website. And then I've just launched the Faces of a Sales Manager, which is a 9-week course, which talks to all management elements. Yes, I've named it Faces of a Sales Manager, but any manager could actually do this course, because it talks to the fundamentals of how to manage people. Yeah. So whether you are a person that's recently been promoted, or somebody that wants to be promoted into a leadership role, or if you've been managing a team for many years, or if you're managing managers and you're needing to have a fresh insight or fresh eyes set on a situation, then this course will unpack that all for you in terms of strategy, the methodologies, how to measure, how to uncover whys, all those types of things that I actually take an organization through when I'm there face to face.
And this is this aimed at businesses of a certain size? Do you tend to work with companies of a particular size, or just this method can work with everything? Because if it's a micro business, obviously it's not going to be quite the same, because the owner isn't going to have quite the responsibility for people that are there, because they may only have 1 or 2 other members of staff. Do you work with people like that as well to help them to sort of level up?
I've worked with companies as small as 3 people, right up to your big 2,000-3,000 people in the organization.
Yeah. And you mainly in and around South Africa, or you have global clients as well?
I haven't got any global clients at this point in time, but that is my next point of call.
That's the bit that you're going to level up.
That's it. That's it.
Do you think doing your online course as well, that's going to attract people from all over the place? I mean, you put these courses out online, and your market is as far as you can get your message.
That's it. Because the methodologies are robust.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the organizations that I've worked with here are companies that have got footprints in other countries. So the USA, UK. So the methodologies are exceptionally sound, and it doesn't matter whether you use it in South Africa or use it in Timbuktu. The methodologies are what are good.
Yeah. So you're working with people, you're getting them to look at different things, and mindset, and all those other different elements. What do you do then when you get to a stage? And I've been asked this before, because we do similar things in essence, in a way. But what do you do when you get to the point where they go, okay, well, we've got this now. Thank you very much for this. Do you then just go, you shake hands and you go your own, like you do with this other client? Or is there a way that you can keep in touch and keep working with people? Or is there a way you get to somewhere and you say, right, we've achieved what we've needed to? How does that work? Because often people say, well, how long is this going to take? How long is it going to take to get there? It's a little bit like asking marketing, isn't it? How long is it going to sell the product? Well, I don't know. We've got to try a few things. We've got to tweak it. We've got to retest it. We've got to keep doing it. We've got to keep tweaking. Is that sort of, do you do that as well? Or do you definitely have more of a solid idea of your timeframes?
It depends from company to company. And it depends on what the outcome is that they want. So some companies I'm there for a month. Other companies I can be there up to a year. And it all depends on what happens, because when you start with the organization, this tends to be the problems. But as we work through the problems, we pick up other ones. It's those devils that you pick up. It's constant communication to say, okay, well, this is the end picture. This is what we need to implement, and this is what we need to change in order to get your picture. Do you or don't you want to do this? So if they don't want to do this, it shortens the period, but then the outcome might not be favorable. So It depends from organization to organization. It depends on what the processes they have in place. Are they robust processes? Are they working? How much buy-in do they have from their current team members? I mean, at the beginning of this year, I actually worked with a really big organization, and the managers had no authority. They had no respect, and they had no responsibility or accountability at all. So in the time that I was training them and coaching them, I picked this up. They would arrive late to my meetings, and during the meetings, they would just leave and take phone calls. That I eventually just stopped the meeting, and I spoke to their CEO and the MD, and I said, look, this is the problem here. And when I had another meeting with the whole exec group, the exact same thing happened. So it's that good old saying that the fish rots from the head down.
And you know what? Oh my God, you're the only other person I've ever known. I've said that for years. You're the only person. It's weird. As you were going to say that, I knew what you were going to say. When I was 13, I worked in this woodcraft place, and the guy that owned this, it was a little old guy, and he said this. He taught me also. He's one of these wise people that just had all these, and that phrase has stayed with me for years, and it is so very, very true. Which is why I was asking you a little while ago about the fact that they say it's this department. However, often it's, you know, it stems from the top, doesn't it? You know,
it does. One of my superpowers, I would almost call it. Somebody else asked me that a little while ago in an interview. He asked me, "What is your superpower?" And for me, it's a case that I can be very honest and I can sugarcoat it that they will understand it. So if I'm speaking to a managing director or a CEO, I don't feel intimidated. And if that is the case, in this case, it was a case of sitting with them and saying to them, this is the problem. All these things that you're complaining about, it's actually stemming from the leadership, the top leadership of the organization. So in order for you to infect the change going down, you need to change.
Sure.
So I need to work with you first.
Yeah.
So either I work with you or it's not going to change.
Yeah.
And generally, when they see that, they agree, okay, we need to change. But it's a slow process because people don't often look at themselves. They don't do introspection themselves, and they don't like to blame themselves. So it's quite a tough scenario when you have that. And it's 90% of the time, it does start from the top.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you may get a bit of resistance in the first place, but you must get resistance from staff as well that have got used to bad culture and got used to sitting back and not working too hard and getting away with it because the manager's a mate of theirs or whatever the situation may well be. How do you deal with that side? I mean, that's a tricky situation to do. Are you the person? Are you the bulldog that goes in there and sort of tells them, or do you then have to sort of subtly? Because you almost want to be part of the team, but also you need to be able to report back as well. That's a real delicate balance, that, isn't it?
Yeah. For me, it's about it's earning trust both from a senior level and from the junior level. So I'm basically juggling two balls at any given time. Yeah. So I'll sit with the team one-on-one, and I will get all their gripes and complaints. What is the problem? What aren't you liking? What are you liking? And I will make notes of those. And if I've got more than two people that have got the same problem, then I know it's truth. Then I'll investigate that more. But you're right. I gain trust with both sides. Yeah. Yes, I would call myself the bulldog in certain instances, but I don't like to look at myself like that. If there's got to be disciplinary, no,
you wouldn't want to look at yourself like that.
I like to get the buy-in. But if you've got somebody that isn't wanting to work, that is very laid back, it's about sitting with them and uncovering what their why is. Why are you here?
Yeah.
Don't you want to grow? What is your growth plan? And if they don't want to be there, then why are you there? And it's that discussion. And yes, oftentimes I do discipline, and oftentimes I do fire. It is a part of my role.
Yeah, definitely. Hernan has just come on. SHIT. So happy it's Thursday as the business bros, or business bros, as they like to know themselves as. Love the show. Thanks very much, Hernan. Good to see you're watching as well. We like to follow each other. I called him a friend, but he's not really a friend, as he told me quite frankly. But he was only joking. But we like to make friends everywhere, don't we? Doing these podcasts.
Exactly. Yeah. And Landie, I have a question for you, because this is something that has been asked many times and by many people. How many times it's about the money and how versus management, bad management? like in unhappy employees?
When you say the management and the money,
Yeah,
just
because sometimes, it says, people say, why the hell did you left that job? Because you got a good salary, right? And all this. And, or sometimes the manager says, so why the hell they're unhappy? Because I paid them enough money. So how many times it's actually about the money and how many times actually about something else there?
That's a very good question. I would say to you, 99% it's not about the money. It's about what the money buys, number one. Number two, if you're not being fulfilled in your job and you're not growing and you're not talking to why you're there, all the money in the world is not going to keep you. Which is why if somebody resigns, I don't believe in counter-offering them, because the same problems will still be residing there, even if you give them the counter offer. The problems aren't going to change and the reasons aren't going to change. So throwing money at somebody isn't always the solution.
That's a very valid point. I've been in situations where that's happened. They stay, they end up going anyway. So in essence, the company's wasted that money, and the person hasn't worked any harder or put any more effort into the job, because the gripes, the issues, they were still there. They never addressed the problem. They just thought that, give you some more money, you're going to stay, and that's all. That's the only reason they did it. It's a little bit like, I just want to be noticed. Give me some more money, and then they're going to go, and it just bides their time for them to go and look for something else.
And they can ask for more money when they go and interview, because it's shown that I got a counter offer and this is what they paid me. This is how valuable I am, which means they use it as a stepping stone to earn more.
Yeah.
And if it was a promotion, because sometimes companies give promotion with it too, it's a stepping stone. So I'll take the promotion, I'll stay here for another 3 to 6 months, and then I'll start looking for another job. But the inherent problems are still there. And what you find with employees like that, they become entitled. They end up getting that big head, which means you've got a bigger problem on your hands.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think we've all been in situations and worked in businesses where you've got that one person that just seems to just float around and sort of have that air of authority and arrogance, but and not really worthy of it.
No, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, something you said on the notes before the show was about the happy staff or a productive staff. That's not an easy thing to do all the time, though, is keeping them happy, is it? I mean, everybody's got outside issues that they do bring into work, whether you like it or not. And it's all well and good saying leave it at the door, but life doesn't work like that. We can't always leave these things at the door. Obviously, I do. Yeah, I don't really, but we're all party to it. Adrian is particularly calm and calculated. I'm a little more headstrong and probably whatever. But what do you do then? How do you work with people to sort of try and keep that sort of happy go lucky sort of feel, or happy go lucky, but that happier feel to keep them productive?
I've got 2 statements. To back up that one is, first of all, you can't make somebody happy. That person needs to make themselves happy. The second statement is, you cannot change a mindset. You can only influence it. So it's up to the person to make themselves happy. And if they're not happy, then they need to change their attitude. You can't do that for them.
And do you sort of work with the sort of staff on a life coach element, if need be, with people with certain businesses?
Yeah, I do a lot of life coaching with individuals. And when you work from a coaching perspective, from a business perspective, what happens then is you deal with people, and people have problems. And you are right, you can't leave your personal life at the door. It doesn't work that way. Everything is interlinked. So when you've got a person that's having home problems, they will inherently bring it to work. So if they had the fight with their wife this morning and they arrive at work, they're not going to be in a good space. So I would teach them skills on how to change the mindset. So if you've dealt with that, great. How do you process that? And how do you deal with that internally? Because it's a lot of introspection. I believe 100% in introspection, because it's not always the other person's fault. You've always added something to it. So what was your party in the disruption? How did you add to it? And then they come to terms with that, which 9 out of 10 times it's okay. I can go home and I can deal with it with the wife or the husband or an employee. if somebody else has gotten on the wrong side, is how do you deal with, well, how did you contribute it? Because I can't change the other person, I'm dealing with you.
Yeah, of course.
And then 9 out of 10 times I would bring them together and say, okay, well, let's deal with it together. What happened?
Yeah.
And then it will end up in an argument at first. And then you start talking it through. Well, what did you add to it? And what was your part to play with it? And then we find a resolution.
Billions. We were talking about billions yesterday while we were driving, weren't we? Was it yesterday?
That's exactly what I was thinking since the beginning of this whole conversation.
I take it you've seen Billions. Have you, the series?
I have.
So Wendy is Wendy, isn't it?
Yes.
Dr. Wendy. I can't remember her
Wendy
name
Rhodes.
now. Huh?
Wendy Rhodes.
Wendy Rhodes. That's it. I mean, the character that she plays is a great character, and of course, businesses like those, they do need to have somebody like you, somebody like Wendy, that works like that. And the reason I'm using that as an analogy is because there's got a lot of people that will watch that enjoy that, actually, out of let's say soap operas, business shows, whatever you want to class that as. There's a lot of truths in the way that their business is run, and I do think it's really important to have people in the right mindset and to get over issues, get over barriers that they create themselves from the day-to-day role, particularly if there's a lot of pressure, sales environments, marketing environments. In essence, actually, marketing and sales environments are virtually the same thing these days. I mean, I'm older than you two for sure. But going back 20 odd years ago, marketing wasn't a big thing, was it? It was nothing like it is now. Yeah. So you've got departments that in essence work together, but they work quite separately as well. That's sometimes you get a clash there. You must get a clash in the marketing and the sales department sometimes in bigger companies. What do you do then? Do you sit them down and sort of explain the strength of them working together? I mean, how does that work? Manage the process and not the people. So if there's different departments that have a problem, and generally it's not so much between the marketing and the sales, but it's between finance and sales. Yeah, well, there's always a clash between finance. Always finance and sales. So it's generally the sales say that finance asks us to sign too many papers, and they're blocking up the sales process, and I can't close this client because finance doesn't want to allow this. So there's a lot of issues between finance and sales. I find that that's the biggest issue. And what generally happens is there's a process problem. It's not a people problem, because finance will say they're right, and they are. And sales will say they're right, and they are. But there's not a process that's being followed. So it starts with the sales process first, but then what is the sales finance process? And if there's an operations problem, it's what is the sales operations process? And if you've got a robust process in there, it stops all the arguments. So manage the process and not the people. Yeah. Makes a huge amount of sense, and something that we all know from helping businesses and in essence sort of in our own as well over the years. Systems and processes, as boring as they may sound, when you start a business and you go, no, I don't want systems and processes, I want it to be a free-flowing business. Look at Google, they're all sitting down doing this. But they've got systems and processes. There's systems and processes behind every successful business, however large or small. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that side. That's the biggest thing. The people, you got to get the people right, of course, and they're not always right, are they? You got to get people, and you're not going to know they're not right. You're not going to know that straight away sometimes. And the bulldog, you're going to come in and you're going to mix it all up and put these systems and processes in place, and unfortunately some people will have to fall by the wayside. Correct. And in essence, to help the business move forward, you have to get rid of some dead weight, and that may be the right terminology, but I think it is. It isn't easy though, is it? It's not easy doing those things sometimes, working with those people and bringing them the bad news, so to speak.
I often give the analogy when I sit with organizations, and I say, imagine a big red bus. Now, the bus is the organization, and you, which would be the entrepreneur or the MD or the CEO, I said, you're the bus driver. Now, you need a map in order to get from A to B. Now, that is your strategy. But now in the bus, you've got a whole lot of people, and you need to figure out, have you got the right people on the bus? Once you've got the right people on the bus, you need to figure out, are they sitting in the right places? And if they're not sitting in the right places, you need to move them around. And that sinks in with people. because a lot of the time you've got this chaos in the back. Everybody's moving around, and the bus driver's lost the map, or there's no petrol in the bus. The business is not going to go anywhere. So the processes and the strategies it's the fuel in the bus, and does the bus have tires on? But then it's about looking at the people. Who are the people? And a lot of the time, businesses have people that are walking up and down the aisles, and they're clogging the process. And those are the guys that need to leave. Or you've got somebody that's really good at a certain skill, but they're sitting in the wrong position. So move them around. Don't keep them in the same place. But it's about identifying that. But where I add value is when you've been working in an organization for a very long time, you almost get blinders or blinkers on. You almost get this haze. So what happens is I come in and I come with a fresh set of eyes, and I see things that you've not seen, because you've gotten used to the routine and the norms. So I'll come in, I'll point those things out, and they're like, yeah, actually it is there. But I've never noticed it. And you haven't noticed it because you've gotten used to the things working the way they have.
There's a lot to be taken from what you've said this evening or morning or afternoon, wherever everybody is. I love what you do, how you do it. I've had experiences with clients, some of the things that you've said for sure. But yeah, I think the way you look at things and you structure it, I like the analogies work. The buses are good. I like that analogy. That works really well. You can picture it, can't you?
Yeah. A lot of people are visual, especially entrepreneurs are visual. They like to see things.
Yeah. And from an analytical point of view, Adrian, pivotal.
Yeah. I like I said, I stayed in the background and process quite a lot, just because you see me. I like to always analyze what people say and then probably come up with questions. But I used to work for people that don't know. I used to be in corporations for about actually more than 5 years, to be honest, more than 5 years. And I worked in two big corporations. One of them was being Delphi Engineering, and the other one was Ford, the company, as in the engineering place. With 3,000 people in the same building and loads of managers and all that. And there definitely was a reason why I left the corporation world. I definitely found loads of the things that you said there in the management behavior on both sides in the corporation world. And that's why one of my questions wanted to be, do you think managers, or if you get promoted to a manager, you should invest in yourself anyway and try to get better at that, or you have to expect for your company in order to sort that out for you?
I think it's both. I think you as a person need to invest in yourself. I often ask people, what is the last book you read, or what was the last podcast you listened to? You need to be continuously equipping yourself. But another thing is, an organization, if they put you into a management role and you haven't had the training, what you're doing is you're sending somebody out into war without a gun, or a gun without bullets. So, I think it's the organization's responsibility, but it's also yours.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking that is because I'm not going to say the company, doesn't really matter now, but at one of the corporations that I worked, one of my managers said that he always wanted to become a manager. And once he became, it was very difficult because there was no training in place about how to work with people. So there was training in place about other things, but not how to work with people. And he asked me, how do you deal with a 65-year-old grumpy guy that doesn't want to accept any new trainees, in the company, and he thinks everyone's going to take his job, coming to complain to you? And how do you deal with a 25-year-old one that wants to be good at his job and all this? So yeah, you always find yourself in places like that, which are quite difficult sometimes.
And that's where a coach comes into play, because I don't think you can learn about things like that. You need to walk with somebody. You need to walk a journey with them and show them by example. I've dealt with both those scenarios, both of them. So, being a manager is a huge responsibility. You've actually got the employees that report into you. You're actually holding their lives in your hand. You're responsible for them. So if you aren't managing them properly, you are damaging them. And I take that very, very seriously. So for me to walk in to help another manager manage staff, which is why my tagline and my passion is to equip and empower leaders so that they can equip and empower others. But a lot of managers get promoted because they shine. And generally, they're not shining because they're managing well, or they're working well with people. They're managing well within a process, or they're a good salesperson. But they don't know how to manage people. But then they get given a whole bunch of people that they need to manage, and that's when the wheels come off the bus.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you get it. I mean, I worked in capital equipment, years ago. The sales processes in those, it's the same the world over. Whatever the equipment is, whatever the machinery is, or whatever you're selling, the teams or the structures are the same. And you get people coming through the ranks, the best salespeople, and then they go, well, they work very well with their regional director, for example, and so they put them into a management position. And I've seen this before, and I've seen. And in fact, I'm not being big-headed here, but I was earning more money than my manager, which also used to piss him off as well. So, and so what you then get is this manager that was actually not a bad salesman. He wants the status of being the manager, but actually he can't manage people. As you said, you can manage a process, but managing people is a very, very different thing. And it's not an easy thing to do. Entrepreneurs are not always, as you said, the best at managing people. That doesn't mean that salesperson is going to be an entrepreneur, but they may have a flair at doing certain things. But I think the biggest thing that's come from what you've said, I think for sure, is lead by example. And working with that to get that in place and putting those structures and getting those processes in place, and then getting the person at the top to understand that this is a benefit to them and the staff. And then I'm assuming that they then can sit back at some stage and they go, it wasn't that difficult to do that. And now look how much better we are. How more productive, how much more efficient and effective we are as a business. Yeah,
I agree with you. And that's the outcome.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love it. I love that. Definitely. Well, I could definitely talk to you for ages on this subject because it fascinates me how there are many people out there running pretty successful businesses that could increase their turnover and productivity if they just looked at themselves and looked at their processes and systems sometimes, rather than just blindly going on saying this has worked for years, this is fine, this has worked for years. Well, we've just had a massive shift in the world, and these things are definitely not working for a lot of companies, making way for the new world of business, for sure. We said that before we started recording, didn't we?
We did.
Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can everybody find you, Landie?
You can find me on www.landiestevens.com, or you can follow me on Facebook at Landie Stevens Consulting, or on LinkedIn at Landie Stevens Consulting.
And you have a free e-course, did you say, that you have as well?
I've got one free e-course called Don't Panic, Regroup. And then I've just launched my Faces of a Sales Manager, which is a 9-week course, which takes you through from A to Z in terms of what are the challenges that a manager has to go through. How do you segment markets? How do you manage people from A to Z? You name it, it's there. It's my methodologies. It's my processes. It's 27 years worth of work that's been put into one e-course.
That's all up there.
Yep. That's whatever was here has now been put down. The manual and on videos.
Not all of it. Not all of it. Keep some of it back.
Not all of it. Not all. There's more coming. There's more coming. But the basic stuff is there. So, and the nice thing about this e-course is it's not your normal e-course that you need to do it. You can actually do it on the go. So as I teach, you can go back and implement, and then come back and get the next lot and then implement. And you can actually see it roll out within your organization and start seeing the benefits while you're actually doing it.
Right.
That's how I've set it up. It's actually awesome.
Yeah. Sounds very cool. Well, I'll make sure there's some links around on the YouTube video and some posts that we're going to be putting up over the next couple of weeks as well. So look out for that. Of course, you'll share this across your platforms and things as well for us, won't you?
So we'll do so.
This will get turned into an audio podcast as well. So this will be going out there. So if you want to know more about Landie, then there's going to be some links. Click on those. You can either ask us or go and find Landie Stevens. Adrian, thank you very much for co-hosting this evening. Landie, thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Adrian, it's been wonderful, as always.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure, as always.
And if you want to know more about what we do at Essex Business Radio, you need to check out our Facebook. Is the most of the stuff goes on there, and Instagram, but it's all across our social platforms and profiles. Essex Business Radio, apart from Twitter, which is Essex Biz Radio, BIZZ Radio. YouTube, go over and subscribe over there as well, and you'll be able to see these when they come up Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, as you will on Facebook as well. So thanks very much for everybody that's joined us this evening. Thank you to Landie. Thank you to Adrian. And we're going to sign off for now. So I'm going to say ciao for now.
Brown cow.